Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, I'm doing a driving comparison with the Toyota Highlander and the Mazda CX-90 to see which one drives the best. Before we get into this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Brent Brown Toyota in Orem for giving me some time with the Highlander, and then also to the Orem Mazda for giving me some time with the CX-90. Both of these vehicles, as of me filming this video, are available for sale, so if you're interested, I'll include a link to both their websites in the description down below so you can check out these vehicles and the rest of the inventory that both of them have. And then on a side note, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into it. We are going to start off in the newcomer, the CX-90, right? The Highlander has obviously been around for quite some time. And you know, Mazda's had the CX-9 for quite some time, and the CX-90 is kind of replacing the CX-9 in a way. But I still thought it would be fun to drive this and then drive the Highlander second, because what I want to see is, you know, do I feel like I'm upgrading when I jump into the Highlander from a driving experience perspective from the 90? Do I feel like I'm losing anything? You know, all of that. I find that very important. And as always, apparently I got to adjust the GoPro right off the bat because it never wants to stay in my head. Anyways, first off, seat comforts, it's good. Now, something that I do want to mention about Mazda seats is that they are, you know, they are smaller. They're not like tiny, but it'll be interesting to see how the Toyota seats compare. But the Mazda seats, you definitely want to make sure that you're taking good care of your health to properly fit in these seats. But I mean, I'm a pretty big person. I'm over 200 pounds at this point, and I fit in these seats quite comfortably. So I feel like for most people, I think you're going to fit in these seats more than adequately. Now, aside from that, ride quality is actually really good with the CX-90. It's got this nice, comfortable ride about it that I really appreciate. And, you know, just sitting in this interior, again, this is like a quote-unquote more like baseline CX-90, and it feels so luxury. Like the touch points are really high quality, and, you know, you got stuff on the dash. Again, might not necessarily be like the highest end material, but it still looks very high quality. The fit and finish is fantastic. I really don't think that there's another automaker in this particular like price point that has fit and finish that's as good as what Mazda is putting out there right now. Toyota is, you know, it's there with some of their product, but again, I think that the only manufacturer that builds vehicles in this price range that maybe would be like Lexus, right? Toyota's a luxury offshoot, but you know, you're gonna have to pay quite a bit more money for a Lexus RX, for example, that you might compare to this. So there's that. Good power. That's not even in the sport mode. Transmission's also very responsive. So I've got it in sport mode now. Like how it like pulses red. That's such a cool effect of the gauge cluster. But let's see what this 3.3 liter inline six is all about. It's got good power. Again, this is the regular version. This is not the high output, and it moves like tons of torque. It's a big improvement over the 2.5 that was in the CX-9. That is for sure. So let's get into some of the things up here with our driving with the CX-90. And if you haven't seen the walk around comparison already, I recommend you go watch that. I did like a full like kind of like tour of both of the vehicles, comparing the features back to back. But overall, exterior wise, I think they've done a really good job with the styling. I noticed when this car first came out, people were kind of like, I don't know about the styling, but now that the CX-90's been out for I think like a couple months at this point, now people are starting to be like, I really like the styling. Mazda's done something like new and it's different, right? And now people are talking about how different the styling is. It's funny how that happens. Whatever new car comes out, everyone says that they're not so sure about it, or some things they'll call it ugly, but then once the car's been out for a while, then people talk about how it's so groundbreaking and the company was so daring to go for that styling. I just think it's funny. But interior for this price point is really, I mean, the fact that, again, these aren't real leather seats, they're leather trimmed, which means like typically the bolsters are leather and then the rest of the seat is not, but they're comfortable, they look good. I love the sound of this inline six too. It's got such a clean sound to it. But yeah, really nice interior. It drives really well. It's got great power, and it's all at a very, very affordable price point for this segment. Again, it's not like this is way more expensive than everything else in the segment. You look at any, and again, comparing to the Highlander, right? Like, you look at the features that has and the interior and everything that has, and we'll pop into that in just a moment. And again, it's like the same price as this. So, you know, Mazda is basically, in my opinion, with this car, they're offering a much more premium vehicle compared to what you're getting with the other automakers, and they're not asking like a premium when it comes to price. They're pricing it at the same amount as the other automakers. So I find that pretty awesome. With that being said, let's hop into the Highlander. Let's talk about visibility before we set off here in the Highlander. Here's visibility of the hood, both the mirrors, do a blind spot monitoring throughout the rest of the rear. And you know, comparing visibility, it's honestly pretty similar in both of them, because they have the, you know, crossover styling. They both do have, like in the very back, the windows are kind of small, so they do have kind of a little bit of a blind spot back there, but again, blind spot monitoring fixes that whole shebang, whatever you want to call it. But instantly hopping to the Highlander, it has a completely different feel and experience. The Mazda, right, I got into that car and I felt like I was in a luxury car. I felt like you know, blindfold me and, you know, you could convince me I was in a BMW or an Audi or something like that. More Audi though, because when it comes to the kind of feel of it. But anyways, in this though, I feel like I'm in a more of a utilitarian type vehicle. I will say these seats, the padding on them is a little bit softer. So there is that benefit of the Highlander, and the seats, I feel like I could, you know, eat a few more cheeseburgers and still fit in these seats, right? They're not as tight as the Mazda seats. So I guess these seats are more American, is the way that I'll put it. Ride quality is a lot different. So it looks like this has a big focus on the damping. And what I mean by that is, what Mazda has gone for with the CX-90 is they've had a focus on handling. This, you can tell, like with the steering, it's a little bit looser, and you know, again, I want to go through a few more corners, but the handling doesn't feel as tight. But what you lose in handling, it feels like the damping's a little bit better, so it's less firm than the Mazda. So some of you might like that more, some of you might not like that more, because you know, some people like the, you know, tighter handling that you can get with vehicles. The steering wheel is another, you know, one. So like the material use on this, like the fit and finish is just as nice as the Mazda, but like this doesn't, like the Mazda's feels more luxury. This again feels more on the utilitarian side with the actual feel of the materials, and you get that throughout the rest of the interior as well, which again, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. Like everything feels like it's going to last. Same thing in the Mazda though, to be honest, like it still feels like everything's lasting there. But that's kind of the, I guess, the overall ambiance of the Highlander that you get. So we're getting up and moving here a little bit with the Highlander. Good torque out of the engine, definitely a different sound, right? Inline 6 versus inline 4-cylinder. I will say though, I'm impressed with the torque with this so far. At least like just kind of lightly getting to the throttle with the around town situation so far. I haven't really felt like I've lost anything compared to the CX-90, which, I mean, when we look at the power figures, there's like a 20 pound-feet of torque difference between the vehicles. And we're in sport mode. We'll get our acceleration here. Okay, it does feel slower. Can confirm. It's not slow by any means for a crossover in the segment. It's actually, the turbocharged engine does really well, but it doesn't have the same oomph that the Mazda has with that inline 6. Mazda has more horsepower, more torque, and you do feel it with the acceleration. So there is definitely a perceivable difference between the vehicles, and so that'll get me into summing things up. And you know, I know that not all of you are going to agree with me, and you don't have to, right? This ultimately is just my journalistic opinion, whatever you want to call it. So here's the deal. When it comes to exterior styling, I do think that some people are going to like one over the other, just depending on tastes, right? The Mazda, again, it's definitely something that's new when it comes to styling, and it's different from what you see with most automobiles. And so some people are just not going to like that difference, whereas other people, right, they're really going to appreciate it. So again, I feel like it's kind of polarizing. Whereas the Highlander, again, I would never call this, like, I wouldn't call it beautiful, I wouldn't call it ugly. It's neutral. Like, it's just a crossover. It doesn't really evoke any sort of conversation, in my opinion. I think that Toyota does what Toyota does best, right? They're neutral and they're conservative with their styling, and it works very well for their brand. So that's all fine. When it comes to the interiors, I like the Mazda interior more. I think this interior, again, it has just as many features. It's just as usable. I just like the more luxury feel of the Mazda. Despite the fact that the seats are a little bit tighter, which I know, again, can be annoying for some people, not a problem for me. I fit in them perfectly fine. So again, I think this interior, it has that Toyota feel where it feels like it's very durable and it's gonna last a long time, but Mazda has that feel with their interior, plus it has an upscale feel. So I don't know, I just think that upscale plus durability, like, what more could you ask for? And then when it comes to driving experience, again, there's pros and cons to both. This, it seems like, again, there's more of a focus on comfort, whereas with Mazda, it seems like there's more of a focus with handling and sporty driving. Again, now they're both three-row crossovers, so are you going to care about more comfort more, or are you going to care about sporty driving and handling more? I think it's just going to depend on the individual buyers. And then when it comes to the powertrains, I think this powertrain is really good, but the inline six, I mean, it's more economical, it has more power, and I personally am all about having a bigger displacement powertrain that is less stressed out, right? And again, it's not like this four-cylinder is not pushing out insane amounts of power. Like, there are four cylinders like 400 horsepower. So this thing isn't insanely stressed out, but still, an inline six that could be pushing out like 500 horsepower, only pushing out 280 horsepower, like, that engine is not stressed out whatsoever. This is what Toyota did for such a long time. Like, you look at like the Tundra with the old 5.7 V8, you look at the 4Runner with the 4.0 V6, like, huge displacement, no power, but that meant tons of reliability. Mazda's done that with the inline six. So I do think that Mazda's powertrain is more impressive. I do think that this is very impressive for a turbo four-cylinder. It's probably my favorite turbo four-cylinder in a crossover. And then in this size of crossover segment, whatever you want to call it. So anyways, to come full circle, Highlander or CX-90, at the same price points, I lean more towards the CX-90, but again, I do see the case for the Highlander. So I want you guys to let me know in the comment section below which one you would rather have, Highlander or CX-90, and why you pick one over the other. Like, if you go on CX-90, is it because of the more luxury based thing? And with Highlander, is it because of Toyota's reputation? Is it because of the interior? You know, like, this interior would be way easier to clean than the Mazdas, I think, because of the coloration, right? The gray trim, and then also the fact there's no perforations in the seats. So like, I do see that benefit too. Again, there's always pros and cons. Either way, let me know which one you choose.